Jimmy K here, Metal Voice. Look at this. The Metal Voice shirts are now on sale. Just go to the video description to find out on how you can purchase one. Metal!
Here we are on the Metal Voice, and a long-awaited interview that Jimmy and I have been chasing after for years now. We have on the phone Carl Dixon of Coney Hatch fame. Hello, Carl.
Hey, you finally caught me.
That's right. Wasn't for a lack of trying.
That's right.
I'm netted.
He's a busy man, busy man. So we'll get right to it. We know the time is short here, and you know, reading Hit Parader magazine, I think it was, and an article, a little blurb about Coney Hatch, and I get over to what used to be Sherman's record store. Remember them, Jim?
Yes, yes.
And here we go. There's the Coney Hatch album. I got it right here. I'm holding up the vinyl as we speak, Carl.
Wow.
And the very first, back in '82, and there it is, The Devil in the Deck, Hey Operator, all the great hits, produced by Kim Mitchell.
Yeah, Kim.
So you got the first album. How did that go? What was that kind of like?
First album, well, gee, that came out really as a product of the time we spent writing songs in bars. In fact, Devil's Deck, and Love Toys we put together in Quebec. The old Maples Inn out in the West Island is where we put together Love Poison and Devil's Deck, I think. Actually, we used to get up in the mornings before the bar opened and rehearse and then go back to bed at lunchtime. So we were always writing songs, Andy Curran and I. And so in those days we used to come and play Quebec a lot. So it was a big part of our songwriting period for making that album. And we were actually up in Chicoutimi the day we found out that Kim Mitchell wanted to work with us.
Oh, wow.
And I still have the notebook I kept at the time with great big 5-inch letters, Kim Mitchell said yes, written all over the page.
So being signed to Anthem Records, of course, Rush's label, and managed by Ray Daniels. Kim had opened for them with Max Webster on numerous occasions. So was that one of the reasons why Kim got in touch with you?
Well, in fact, he had just quit Max Webster when we first got together, and he was looking for something to do. And his lyricist, Pi Dubois, he came out to see us at the Gasworks, Pi did.
Oh, Gasworks. And
he liked us a lot, and a famous old rock club in downtown Toronto. Yep. And he went back that night or next day and said to Kim, look, I saw this young band. It is really good. You might like them. So then Kim came out also and enjoyed what we did, and he went into a rehearsal room to do pre-production for a demo with us. We recorded a demo, I forget where we went for that now. It must have been Oshawa. And they took it around to a few labels, but inevitably, you know, we ended up where he had the most interest and the most power at Anthem Records, where he was already signed.
So now, before the second album's release, I find myself in Granby, Quebec on June 24th, the national holiday here, watching a band from Ontario called Coney Hatch in I guess it was a recreation center.
A roller rink.
Roller rink, that's it. I went over with my friend. We're like 13 years old, weighed about 65 pounds each. Got the cafeteria chairs, put them in front of the stage. There couldn't have been more than, fortunately, because of the big festivities, there was not many more than 10, 12 people. Coney Hatch starts, great show, and a fight breaks out. So there's not enough people to swing and to even get angry at, and a fight breaks out. So, but
well, they must have already had an appointment to gather for their fight then.
yeah. I'll meet you on Friday night at the roller rink. So.
Yeah, and we'll start swinging.
So you played a lot of songs. I remember distinctly saying the new album's going to be out soon. This would have been around June, I guess, of '83. And was that album delayed because after that concert we went to the record store every week and saying, where's the new Coney Hatch, where's the new Coney Hatch, and it seemed like it took months for it to come out after.
Oh, actually no, it was only a few weeks, because First Time for Everything came out on the radio soon after that, and we were out touring in Western Canada by late July, doing dates with Triumph and the Tubes and people like that. And we got the call that we had landed the opening slot in the Iron Maiden tour. So we were on our first date there in early August. So the record was probably another Official release date must have been maybe third week of July.
Okay.
Carl, did you?
But you know, when you're that age and impatient, a week seems like forever, right?
Yeah, it just
a week
seems
like a month.
Carl, did you open up for Judas Priest on the Screaming for Vengeance tour?
Yes, that's where, and that brought us to Montreal to play the Verdun Arena.
Oh.
We were in the Quebec Colisée, our first night ever of opening for their tour. Well, we had one big show before that, was Ted Nugent and Cheap Trick at the Exhibition Stadium in Toronto. Then we were all over the eastern states for the first part of touring for that first album. We played with Eddie Money and Edgar Winter and Peter Frampton and all kinds of people. And then we got the call, get up to Quebec City, you've got the Judas Priest tour. So we arrived there and we were just excited off our nut. It was just such an exciting thing, big deal, big tour. So we started at Quebec Colisée. Second night was at the Verdun Arena in Montreal. Well, you know where the Verdun Arena is. Yeah. And then it kept going right across the country and down into the States after that. So we did about 25, 27 shows with Judas Priest on that tour.
Great.
What was that like? I mean, do you have any highlights from the Judas Priest tour?
Well, you know what? It was, the way I describe it is, it was like, for us, it was like our university or our college. It was our rock college, going to the big tour across the country, seeing how the established guys did it every night. And we learned a lot from watching them. So it was very important to, as part of our education. And it also gave us the confidence that we believed we could do this now.
There you go. And then, of course, opening, as you said, for Peace of Mind tour for Iron Maiden.
I was there.
I was there. We were both there in the Montreal Forum.
Yeah.
And here they come out, Coney Hatch, and we got the night. I've never heard Thumper start that so fast in my life. I mean, it's just so powerful. And you guys kicked into We Got the Night. And it's like to say, okay, guys, we're not going to play any ballads tonight to this crowd.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I'll tell you, for many years after, even, you know, to this day, I get a little thrill up my spine when I think of that night, because that was a night, because I'd lived in Montreal and I knew the character of Quebec and Montreal audiences. I felt like we were being sized up at first. It wasn't just, you know, in the States, they go, wah, no matter what you do. In Ontario, they sort of sit on their hands more, and even if you're great, they don't give you much. In Montreal, I felt like it was a real music appreciative crowd, and they were really listening at first to see what we delivered, and the crowd response warmed up song by song, and then by the end we got a standing ovation and a demand for an encore.
Yes.
And that was one of the nights in all those opening shows where I felt we'd really earned it, because we started off okay, you know, the Montreal crowd is clearly saying, okay, what do these Anglais boys have? Show us, come on, boys, show us. And I felt like we'd shown them something, and it was responded strongly. So I'll never forget that Montreal Forum night.
That was a great night.
Is that when you first made the connection with Iron Maiden, Steve Harris?
That tour, sure. I mean, our first date with them was, well, it wasn't that show. We started off down, we joined the tour in Alpine Valley, Wisconsin, actually, down near Chicago. And we went, let's see, all through the Midwest with them, over to the east coast of the States, and then up into Quebec City, again, the Colisée, and we actually did a show up in Chicoutimi.
Oh, really?
In between Quebec City and Montreal, and I still had the sweatshirt. The Iron Maiden guys thought it was such a laugh that they were going to this place called Chicoutimi. They made up special sweatshirts for the occasion with their emblem, and it said, Iron Maiden, today Chicoutimi, tomorrow the world.
Were they anything
I still have that sweatshirt in the drawer here.
And that was one of their, you know, they played on a number of the Beasts. They had played on the Verdun Auditorium, and now, of course, Peace of Mind was their major headlining tour, so it was also a new terrain for them.
Yes, well, it was their first time being established as a headliner, and I'll tell you, there were places where they still weren't established as a headliner on that tour. It was still in the building process. I remember there were a couple of dates like Kalamazoo, Michigan, and maybe Erie, Pennsylvania, and I remember definitely Fargo, Nebraska, where the attendance was not very good, and a couple of those places, the manager gave the promoter back some of the money, so that they'd have a good relationship and do another show with them next time around. And in Fargo, North Dakota, they just canceled the show because there weren't enough tickets sold.
So speaking of managers, Carl, you had Ray Daniels, right, from Rush, you know, manager long-term, success, a little bit of a successful band, I would say. and then you got...
They're okay, those kids.
Yeah. And then you got, you know, Sammy Hagar in his autobiography. He says Ray broke up the biggest band in the world, which was Van Halen. It was all because of Ray Daniels. So what's your feeling about Ray? And his time with Coney Hatch?
Well, last time I saw Ray, we were side stage together at the Rush show in Montreal on the, what was it, Clockwork Angels? Was that the name of the tour? Last 2 years ago, I think it was, maybe 3 years ago.
Sure.
Maybe more now. God, the time flies by.
Flies.
Great show.
Yes. Anyway, yes, we were side stage, and I saw Ray there because I had backstage access with my history with the company and with Andy Curran, our old partner, working there. So I saw Ray and said hello at first, and then about halfway through the show, I walked over and in between songs, I said, Ray, you know what, I just have to say something to you after all these years. You know what, I want to say thank you for giving me my start all those years ago, taking a shot because you established me to have a career for all this time. And you took a gamble, so thank you. And he looked at me for a second and then just said, ha, I got paid. And so I just laughed and left it at that. But I'll tell you, he's a very smart businessman. He's focused on the dollar side of it. So if he's your representative and engaged with you, you're doing all right. Larry Gowan and I are great friends, and we played hockey together for a long time. And one time after the dressing room was clear, and it was just Lawrence Gowan and hanging around, we were talking in the dressing room after everybody left, and I said to him, okay, so Larry, Ray's been your manager too. I have my opinions of him, but I'd want to know what you think, because, you know, you worked with him. You didn't have the record deal with him, but he was your manager. Larry thought for a moment, and he said, I'll tell you this. If you're worth $1 out in the marketplace, Ray knows how to get $2 for you.
That's cool.
That's you can't ask more than that from a manager. So.
No.
And then, of course, now we're going to Friction. And I was surprised to see that's 1985. Time flies, like you said.
Yep.
And out goes Dave Ketchum, and in comes Barry, handlebar mustached Connors on drums.
The mustache man, yeah.
So and now that album, some have said it was too heavy for the times.
Ooh.
I thought it was a little commercial at that time.
Same here.
Yeah, you know what? That was a funny time. Everything was based on success in the U.S. by that point, and the U.S. had just had some kind of a weird backlash with those mothers, not against drunk driving. It was the mothers worried about heavy metal infecting the youth's brains.
Right.
Yep.
Whatever their associate. Tipper Gore was the head of it, Al Gore's wife.
Yep.
Anyway, they were up in arms, and all the radio stations kind of backed away from what was perceived to be heavier music. But also, we didn't have the support of our label in the same way. And that's a common story at record companies, or when they were more powerful than they are now. You always had to have somebody working in the office who loved your band and would go to bat for you. And by the third album, the people that loved Coney Hatch at the American offices weren't really there anymore. So we couldn't get the support that we'd had in the past. Therefore, we couldn't get the airplay. We couldn't get many of them to come out and see our shows. John Mellencamp's brother, Ted, who looks almost exactly like John, was the Texas and southwestern rep for Polygram Records at that time. And we went down there on a tour with Krokus and Accept.
Krokus.
So we got to know Ted a bit, and he's a great guy. And he started to tell me the story because we were kind of going, Ted, what's going on? We don't really feel much love from the company. However, we wouldn't. That's a modern expression. However, we would have said it then. And he said, well, I'll tell you. I was at the convention in Atlanta, and Gunter, the new head from Europe, was talking about the plans for the bands we're going to promote this year, and I stood up at the conference and I said, well, Gunter, what about, great young bands like Coney Hatch? They have a really good new album. Why don't we promote them? And he said, Gunter looked at me and said, because, Ted, we have other priorities.
Oh.
And Ted looked at me and said, I knew right then, son, you was sunk.
That's the tolling of the death bell.
Yeah. What was it like touring with Accept?
They were sort of odd guys. Udo was a neat little guy, and he loved camouflage stuff. So Andy Kern, he knew how to win people's hearts. So he went and found a camouflage patterned ballpoint pen on a lanyard that you could wear around your neck to be ready for autographs at all times. Because I don't know if you recall, Udo liked to wear the camouflage stuff on stage.
Yeah, that was his thing.
So Udo loved this and loved Coney Hatch after that as a result. They were sort of a funny band. The drummer wrote all the songs, and the guitar player's wife was their manager, kind of like Janine from Spinal Tap, and they were they were good guys, but I didn't, aside from Udo, we didn't get to really know them that well, but they sure were heavy and they sure were tight. They had that. They were like the Scorpions without hits. They really had that tight precision kind of playing going as a band. So yeah, they were enjoyable.
What about Krokus? Hold on, there was Krokus was very arrogant. I mean, I love Krokus, but how did they come across on tour?
The word you just used, what was that again?
Arrogant?
Arrogant?
Oh, that word. Gee, I've never heard them described that way before. Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. So I mean, when we interviewed Mark Storacci, he was saying, well, it really wasn't like that. And then Dee Schneider came out and said, man, these guys gave us the hardest time. So would you agree, I guess, on Dee Schneider's assessment?
Well, it was more like they treated us like we didn't exist and we were an annoyance in their universe. So that wasn't very friendly. Good thing they weren't the headliners, except was.
Oh, there you go. So then,
the thing with Krokus, we walked up for our first show with them, and I looked at their set list, and it was 50% cover songs that they decided to record so they could get hits. Yeah. And that bugged me. I really liked their first. I don't know if it was their first album. They had a great song on one of their early albums called "Burning Bones," and I thought, wow, that's cool. That's heavy and it's catchy, and the guy sings great, and the guitar riff is great. And it was, sort of disappointing to meet them and see the way they acted. So now I feel like it wasn't just us. That's how they were with everyone.
Yeah, it seems to be. So then, and then, so that was, there's some great songs on our album, Girl from Last Night's Dream and Burning Love.
Oh, yeah, and you know what? That was our most popular album in Europe. And people in Europe ask us, we went to play the Firefest in Europe, or in England rather, 2014, and they were asking, could we please do the Friction album in its entirety, from start to finish, because they loved it so much. And the guy that ran that, Kieran Dargan, he told me he did the research, and Friction outsold our other albums 3-1 in the UK and Europe.
Unbelievable.
Crazy.
For me, it's still out of hand. Well, despite the cover,
I'm a first album lover. I don't know. The debut for me is.
They each have things to recommend them, and you know what I love about that first album is that it just captured that energy of us so excited and just getting a chance to make a record, and we'd had the time to work these songs together on the stage and get them ready to record, and we were together all the time on the road and writing. And so it really was, they always talk about how the first album was the best one for that reason, because the band's together all the time. Right. When you start to get popular, you're not together as much. It's weird.
Yeah. And then, Max Norman comes along, a little bit more of a polished sound. And
yeah, Max did a lot of things differently than the way Kim did. And, the perfect illustration of that is we had a sad episode where the record company made us audition the two of them, either Max or Kim, to be the producer of the next album.
Wow.
And yeah, it was really weird, and Kim was not pleased, but he went through with it to be a good guy. And of course, he didn't end up doing it, and we've always felt guilty about that. But what I've said in our defense was we didn't even know who Max Norman was before the record company made us give him a shot. We thought, well, Kim will be doing all our albums, after he got us signed and produced the first one, and we did okay. But the record company felt we needed somebody who was a bigger name and a more experienced producer to take us to, quote unquote, the next level. But, so it was skewed against Kim right from the start. The record company really didn't want him to do it, but they had to make us feel like it was our idea. So just to illustrate the difference between our two approaches, Kim came in and we played him the songs we had at the time, and he said, well, I like all of them. So we said, great, Max came in and he said, I don't like any of them.
Oh, jeez. Pressure's on.
and guess who got the job?
Weird. What about Hey Operator? Aldo Nova covering your song. You did it well, and then he comes along and off his second album does Hey Operator. How did that come about? Do you know?
Well, we had a connection in a guy named Valazzoli, who at one point I used to say was one of the only enemies I ever had in the music business, or perhaps in the world. I've softened that feeling now, but Val we used to work at the publishing company, ATV Pop Music in Toronto, where Aldo had a songwriting deal. So they paid him a weekly wage to get that first album ready and write all the songs, and then Val Valazzoli came over to work for Anthem and was involved with us. So apparently Aldo liked the first Coney Hatch album so much that he used to play it on the concert house system before he went on to warm up the crowd, kind of. And he admits that Monkey on Your Back on his second album was a ripoff of Devil's Deck, and he thought that Hey Operator should have been released as a single in the States, which it never was, and that he could have a hit with it if he did it. Unfortunately, I don't mind saying, Aldo, if you're listening, he fucked the whole thing up.
Oh, jeez. Oh, jeez.
I'll be talking to Aldo Nova, by the way.
He's got a new album coming out.
Should I tell him that?
I'll tell you why I'll speak plainly, because Kerrang! Magazine asked him the same question. Why did you do Coney Hatch's Hey Operator? And Aldo, let's call him the confident fellow that he is, told them, because I wanted to show them how it should have been done. So I always thought, okay, one day I'm going to get you, buddy. But on the other hand, I've made a nice amount of money over the years from Aldo doing my songs. So
there you go.
It's all in good fun, but you've got to have some rivalry in there too.
Sure.
So you've got some solo albums that were released, and then touring as a member of April Wine. Have you had the chance to read the Miles Goodwin autobiography? No. No.
I'll just say no. I've had a couple of people mention to me about it. I just saw the tone he was taking in the interviews to promote it, where he was perhaps not telling the precise truth about things that happened in the band that I know were not the way he told them. And I thought, okay, so if that's the way he's publicizing this thing, what's in the book? So I didn't really care to spend precious minutes of my life reading it.
There you go.
Okay, all right.
And then, unfortunately, we all heard, sitting on my computer and I'm Googling, and I say, Carl's had an accident in Australia.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, there was one factor of why I was in Australia. My younger daughter was in a TV show starring in a show called The Saddle Club. And I was there visiting, and there were a number of distressing things going on in my family life, and I was upset, and I'd taken special. I was with the Guess Who at that time, appearing in the role of Burton Cummings, and and they gave me some time off because I sensed that my family was falling apart with this separation of my wife and my daughter being in Australia for months, and me being on the road with the Guess Who. So I went down there kind of upset, trying to figure things out, and it wasn't going well even when I went down there. So I kind of forgot on my way home, just before I was supposed to join the Guess Who back in Biloxi, Mississippi. I was driving home on the highway, and I forgot that they drive on the other side of the road there.
Oh, jeez.
And it's as simple as that, folks. I've done a lot of inspirational speaking engagements, talking about it and the recovery of how I got out of it. And the term I've come to, that I've made up to describe it, is emotional impairment.
Yeah,
right.
Which is that you get in such an emotional swirl that you are not in command of your faculties. You're not thinking clearly. You're not seeing clearly. You're not even in the moment. You're so distracted by the emotions that are overwhelming you that you just forget where you are and what you're doing.
I just can't.
And, when you're at home, in our home highways, you can get away with that. We've all had that moment where we drive 5 miles and we think, what just happened? I didn't notice anything on that,
completely
on this last 5 minutes of driving.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened, and I was absolutely myrtleized, just broken to pieces, about 50 different injuries.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember reading about a time I went on your website and sent you my best wishes. I remember like it was yesterday. And hey, look, now you pulled through, motivational speaker or inspirational speaker, I should say.
Yeah, I'm in the best time of my life. I mean, the stresses that the family life were undergoing at that time were an indicator of what was to come. The family did not survive that period of time, but I remarried with a wonderful woman from Australia, of all places.
Oh, there you go.
And we're just the greatest team, and we work together, and we travel together, and we have a wonderful time with everything we do. So there is a happy ending to the story.
Yeah. So now we're going through the bins in the local record shop, I should say, and I come across this thing called Coney Hatch, aptly named 4. Which I'm holding the CD up in my hand right now.
2013.
And I said, I don't care what it cost, I'm getting that because here's the 4th album that I've been waiting 20 years to listen to. So, what's the impetus?
Yes.
Why now?
28 years between album releases, if you can believe that.
Crazy.
What was the timing? How come it happened in 2013? What made it happen?
Well, it began with my accident. All the guys in the band had gone off in different paths. And at the time that I had my accident, I thought, well, I'll just be in the Guess Who for the rest of my life now. And, of course, it didn't work out that way. I couldn't return to the job for years. But at the time, Andy had made, well, they held the phone up to me while I was in a coma. And he said over the phone, from Canada to Australia, you got to get better. The Hatch still has more rocking to do. Come on, buddy, get pulled out of this. So when I got better, that started to become the talk. Well, okay, let's do something else then. So we did a couple of shows in 2010, a couple of shows in 2011. We got an offer to go to the Firefest in Nottingham in 2011. And the morning after our show, I was approached at the breakfast table by a guy from Germany with one offer for a new album deal. And then soon after that, we got a second offer from another company for a new album. And that's who we ended up going with because they offered a bigger budget. It was that Frontiers label from Italy that they were busily signing up just about every band you've ever heard of for a couple of years there. And so, we decided, well, they're putting up the budget that enables us to make the kind of record we want. And so then we set about putting together songs and getting bed tracks done. The recording was spread over about a year. We did 2 separate bed track sessions 6 months apart or so and continued to work on finishing it. And as opposed to the competition feeling of the old days, where Andy and I were always rivals, this time I thought, you know what, he's so experienced at this point, and he's the reason we're back together, really. He put on a fundraising benefit for me after I returned from Australia at hospital, so I asked him to be the producer of Coney Hatch 4, and I said, I just want to let you do it your way, and we'll work together. And I'm so glad I did.
It's a great
because
production.
we had the best working relationship we'd ever had in all these years while we made the Coney Hatch 4 album. And it's continued on that way ever since. I mean, we were good friends in the years between, but as I used to say, you know what, we're way better friends when we're not scrapping over the same piece of turf in the band. When we're playing hockey together, we're great friends. So, the music was a whole different thing that we had to, I guess, grow up a little, because that's what I always say. The reason Coney Hatch broke up back in 80, 85 and 86 was really immaturity.
Wow.
And too much strain that we couldn't cope with.
Are you writing a new album? Is that what's going on there?
Well, you know what? We're not currently writing a new album. Nobody has made an offer for it. And it kind of was disappointing the way Coney Hatch 4 ended up, because today's climate, they thought we were going to run out and do a year's worth of shows, and sell the thing from the stage almost. The Frontiers label thought that.
Right.
And we're in no position to do that. We're all grown men with careers and other things going on. So we're not going to get in a van and drive to Moose Jaw to sell the Coney Hatch 4 album at this stage in our lives. So that's really the reality of how the music business has changed. The economics have to make sense or you just can't do it.
And you got the foreword on the album by Eddie Trunk, who we interviewed and spoke about this album with him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're very proud of the album. We feel like it's the best thing we've ever done.
I love it. I think it's great. So let's go to the present here. So you got November 1st in Toronto, November 2nd in Waterloo, November 3rd in Ottawa, November 4th in Quebec City, and of course November 5th in Montreal.
With British Lion.
British Lion, Steve Harris. I mean, and that's why I kind of like spoke about where did you sort of make that connection with Steve? Have you guys been friends all these years?
Well, we've stayed in touch all these years, and they certainly wished me well when I had my accident. Andy Curran has stayed close friends with Steve Harris all through the years since. They became tennis buddies whenever Steve came to town because he loves playing tennis. And I know Andy visited England a couple of times. So Andy kept the closest relationship. And when Steve was looking for, I know how this happened. Iron Maiden was on their last tour of Canada, and Andy went out to visit, and Steve said, look, I'd really love to bring my British Lion band to Canada for a tour, because we've never been, but I don't know how we can pull it off. What if we do some shows with Coney Hatch and us, and do it a double bill? So that's really how that began.
There you go.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Took almost a year and a half for it to finally fall into place. But that was the start of it, and we're still working out, we're sharing the cruise, we're sharing the travel, we'll be riding via rail train cars together between the towns, and it's going to be fun. And Steve Harris is a great, great guy. He's just as nice as you'd think he'd be from the public appearances.
There you go.
What could fans expect on this British Lion / Coney Hatch tour in terms of a set list?
We will be opening the show with approximately an hour set, and we're going to emphasize the best of each album. And, we kicked around a couple of surprise ideas of, I was suggesting to Andy, why don't we do Wasted Years by Iron Maiden? Because for sure, British Lion won't be doing any Iron Maiden in their set.
Yeah.
And I thought, wouldn't that be fun to surprise them, surprise Steve, and give the crowd, their Iron Maiden fix. And Andy had a thought for another cover song, and then I think the discussion now is, no. We don't play often enough that we have to mix up our set list. Let's just stick with the Coney Hatch stuff that is from all 4 albums.
Good decision, because I got a lot of guys my age who hopefully be there that night. Looking forward to see Coney Hatch. An hour set. I just wet my pants when I heard that. So excited. This is great, Carl. Nothing but good news. And that's why, hey guys, check out everybody. Check out all of Coney Hatch's albums. You got time before the tour starts, so you'll be well versed in all the songs and see Coney Hatch open for British Lion.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to say to your fans? Or some cool stories that you've toured with, maybe Iron Maiden over the years, or?
Well, my fans, I have nothing. So I want to thank them all for keeping track of me, supporting me, coming to see me, having an interest in my music all these years. It really is the reason that I'm still able to do this after all this time. So thank you, everybody.